Thank you guys for joining us, Rob and Shayne. My name's Tony Camaro. Welcome everybody watching to the HBAR Foundry Town Hall on October 24th. My name's Tony Camaro. My partner Milan and I are members of the HBAR Foundry, which is a loose collective of Hedera Hashgraph builders, an alliance of builders and founders, both technical and business people, working together to solve problems collaboratively and to build infrastructure and protocol standards that can help the Hedera ecosystem mature and grow and have everybody singing on the same sheet of music. Today, we're very honored to have with us today both Rob Allen from the Hashgraph Association and Shayne Higdon from the HBAR Foundry. Both of these are granting organization for the Hedera brand. They're doing a lot of great work, and hopefully our questions will reveal some of that work to you guys today, and I hope you find it interesting. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Hey, Tony, thank you.
You're welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, we are going to talk, kind of the flow of this is going to be, we're going to talk about the evolution of both of your organizations, then talk about the current landscape, and then the outlook for 2004. So Milan, do you want to get us started?
Absolutely. Thank you for the wonderful intro, Tony. So let's talk about the evolution of both the HBAR Foundation and the Hashgraph Association. Let's dive right in it. Shayne, so how has the HBAR Foundation changed since its inception in September 2021, which is now exactly 2 years ago?
Yeah, great question, and thanks. It's great to be here. Great to see all of you. We have, I would say, rather than just change, we've evolved. We continue to try to put systems in place that allow us to get smarter and smarter about what we're doing as an ecosystem partner, when we give a grant. We've changed, from a couple of people, when we started this in 2021 to now right at, I think, 28 people at the foundation. And we've done a lot of work. I mean, we literally started from scratch. We were a well-funded startup, for lack of a better term, right? We still needed to create our grant application, our grant processes. How do we take all of the on-chain data and leverage that to determine, are the grants we're giving, resulting in the types and volume of transactions that we care to see? I'll give you guys some statistics, later in the conversation, but, we want more and more high value transactions to be, across the network. And I think, we are, from a goals perspective, our goals remain the same. First is to grow awareness, and we continue to do that. But we try to do that in a really smart and creative way, as opposed to just throwing money at a problem and saying, let's get the Hedera brand everywhere. Let's do that, but do that in key areas where we're aligned to key markets, whether that's the, financial services market, whether that's sports and media, entertainment, whether that's sustainability, etc. Let's do it where it really matters. The second was to accelerate access. How can we continue to give grants that build out the infrastructure that the ecosystem needs? And, we have spent double-digit millions in continuing to partner and give on and off ramps, exchanges, wallet support, etc., and the like. And we continue to do that. We know that we need to continue to evolve with the times, and then finally increase commerce. And, this is whether you're, talking about something like Zenny Travel, or you're talking about Drop, you're talking about, Stablecoin Studio and other use cases where commerce transacts on the network. These goals remain the same. And I think that we are trying to, as best we can, get smarter at, how we deliver these grants and work with our grantees.
Excellent. Yeah, and we definitely see the result of that all over the ecosystem. And so how does the HBAR Foundation interact with SWS Labs and all the key stakeholders in the ecosystem, or accelerators, incubators?
Yeah, we try to have conversations with all of them. Some of them are, industry specific, some of them are project specific. Some of them, just because we know the teams, as an example, Rob, was with us early on, and, is over at the Hashgraph Association, helping them build out their capabilities. And prior to that, he was on the governing council. And so he's got a rich history in Hedera. And so he's a guy that we want to continue to, pluck his brain, and work with him, just like the guys at SWS Labs. I mean, you've got Manson Lehman, you've got Christian Hasker over there, the whole of the engineering team. And so we continue to try as best we can through the HIP process, right? As an example, that's the community-driven public process. But we also look for opportunities to collaborate on things like council recruitment. As we all have industry relationships, how can we do that in a more concerted and organized way? Some of the collateral damage that occurs, all of us aren't having, team meetings each and every day. So sometimes we'll overlap. We'll be talking to the same people. We'll be doing the same things. And, it's at those times we have a conversation around who's best oriented to, do this particular task. And it's been great working with the whole of the ecosystem and ecosystem partners. Excellent.
That's wonderful to hear. And also that you work also on helping to onboard council members. Very interesting. Rob, similarly, can you walk us through the changes with the Hashgraph Association since its inception?
Yeah, thanks, Milan. So we started life as the Swiss Digital Assets Institute, 2021, I think, which was founded by Kamal Yousefi and Stefan Dice back then. And it was initially set up out of Switzerland as a professional training, education, and innovation company to enable startups, enterprises, and government use cases, and all those institutions to adapt to this very fast-changing Web3 environment, for digital assets and decentralized finance, and all of the very fast-moving pace of change that we're seeing all around us. And then in 2021, the Swiss Digital Assets Institute received the approval from the Hedera Governing Council for the launch and delivery of the Hashgraph Innovation Program. So the innovation program, as we see it these days, is a global training and innovation program worth about $165 million over 5 years. So that's the plan. It's operated out of Switzerland, and aims similarly to the goals of SDAI. To empower startups, enterprises, and governments around the world. So that is a program that many people, maybe on this call, have participated in or have experience of, or thinking of applying to. That's kind of our grant-giving operation. That's the program that has been put in place, and it's tiered. Startups, small and medium-sized enterprises, large enterprises, and government. We have a slightly different approach to the foundation, in that we've got this kind of structured program support framework where we assist and support those projects through ideation, through planning and detailed design, and then through delivery, whether it be at the startup end or all the way up to the government end. And we have engineering team, we have project management and PMO team. We bring in external consultants. So, it's kind of a close support framework to assist and support delivery, and actually to mitigate failure, right? So it's actually to try to remove the points of failure in the delivery of any project through, the application of expertise. So the Hashgraph Association was established with that mission, to proactively empower the community and promote the growth of the Hedera ecosystem for DLT transformations, not just out of Switzerland, but globally throughout the world. And we've been evolving too, like Shayne said. This whole space is evolving, and we've had to evolve with it. And an example of that would be taking on the enterprise program. So in addition to the HIP, back in April, this is when I moved across from foundation to the association, the governing council gave us the mandate to set up an enterprise program to activate the governing council use cases and their peers. And you'll have seen some of the exciting news. The WorldPay proof of reserve project that's building the first native Oracle on the Hedera network. Flutterwave, which is Africa's biggest payments infrastructure provider, which is an excellent example of that collaboration between foundation and association, because it was originated out of the foundation, and then we can support on the delivery. So it's exciting times, you know, but we are having to evolve very, very quickly. There is and the second part of your question is that I'm assuming is directed to me as well around collaboration. So I've just said that we collaborate very closely with THF where it's appropriate to do so. Clearly, we are two different organisations, but there are touch points. We don't want grantees double dipping or you know, playing one organisation off against the other. So it's proper governance, and you know, we have a fiduciary duty over the distribution of the grant funding that we've been given by the governing council. So it's right to do that and to talk. But equally, you know, I speak to Wes regularly to review pipelines and to see where the projects are most appropriately sit. With Sabrina and the Payments and FinTech Fund, so that we can assess all the stablecoin studio projects, for example, or Flutterwave is an example of that as well. So we talk a lot, and it's that's the right thing to do. SWS Labs, we talk regularly with. They're actually they're developer advocates. Their engineers are experts in the space. Clearly, they're the core engineering team, and so we draw a lot on their expertise, and our engineers are almost in daily contact with them. If necessary, we bring them into our due diligence process for projects before it kind of gets into the grant committee stage. So plenty of communication, and of course the governing council and Hedera itself invite us into committees, into TechCom, into MEMCOM and CorpCom, which is kind of where we provide specialist advice and input.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's very clear that in both your cases, you're very intertwined with all the stakeholders in the whole ecosystem, and also that it's, when we look back at it, it's only 2 years and so much has happened now. But that's the space. It's going so quickly, and so many changes are going on. So thank you both for your answer. Tony?
Yeah. So clearly you've had a change in objectives from one organization to the other as you came over. You're integrating and you're collaborating with a lot of the organizations out there, but internally, what are your most important internal initiatives at the Hashgraph Association, and what is the intended impact, or what do you hope to achieve?
So, not just internally, we're evolving externally as well. Our external facing organization has to change. There was a very good report that came out of a think tank called MetaGov a month or two ago, called the State of Web3 Foundations, where it assessed, it's a great report, I can recommend it to everyone, 86 pages of bedtime reading. And it assesses 13 of the layer 1 foundations. And the findings are clear. The era of free money is over. The era of pure fire and forget grant funding cannot be sustained over time. So, we've, since the outset actually of the Hashgraph Association, it's been in the vision, the strategy, that at a certain point we would need net new money, and we have to wean ourselves off of the HBAR treasury, and we've been actively working on that. So in addition to the innovation program, we've now set up a ventures program, and the ventures program is complementary with the innovation program. So the successful alumni from the innovation program can be introduced into the ventures program. It will be coupled with a fund, a ventures fund, which we've now had set up in Abu Dhabi, which gives us the ability to raise up to $100 million is what we're targeting. We're actively involved in that. There's so Kamal and Stefan were in Riyadh last week talking to LPs, to limited partners for that fund. And I suspect we're going to get some pretty big announcements over the next few weeks, because that's gone very well. So, and the purpose of that fund, or the ventures program, is really to, like I said, complement the innovation program. So the innovation program can be seen as tech enablement, right? So it's the engineering technical integration with Hedera. It's that part of the project lifecycle where we can get to MVP, or we can deliver a product into market. The commercialization of that project, the scale of that, the marketing, team expansion, that inflection point that all these businesses go through once they've delivered the MVP, is what Ventures Fund and Program are there for. No matter how revolutionary or disruptive a startup is, raising early stage capital is challenging. It consumes founders, it consumes that team, which is very distracting and disruptive to the growth of a startup in particular. And this, of course, is focused mainly on startups rather than enterprises that don't tend to need capital to grow. They've got a different set of rules in terms of product market fit and growth themselves. So for startups and the commercialization and expansion, that's what the Ventures Fund is there. Mm-hmm. So we plan to come in as an early stage enabler, typically ahead of the first institutional round of fundraising, to take care of the startups' initial runway and help them achieve their critical milestones, powered by Hedera, of course.
Nice, nice. So let me repeat back what I heard. Yep. The innovation program is to help startups in the very early stages of developing their product, in order to expand the ecosystem, increase the numbers on the network, and then to further support those startups that you've already invested in. You're bringing resources, including venture capital partners, to help them with the broader runway of activities that a new company has to be engaged in, that the grant money is not necessarily earmarked for those types of expenses.
Yeah, absolutely. So the grant funding does the initial tech enablement and the MVP, bringing that to market. And then, so you can imagine that's the startup stage. And then you've got the kind of scale up stage, which needs venture funding. And the investors are actually going to be investing through our fund. So we'll have, I'll talk about this later, but we'll set up regional chapters in order to get a wider global presence, which we're actively involved in Middle East, North Africa, and Asia Pacific at the moment. And those will create kind of feeder funds into the main fund in Abu Dhabi. And that $100 million fund will be run by a general partner, a GP, and will be coupled with the venture studio. So startups going through the venture studio will get access to funding from that fund. And in that way, we build a portfolio of integrated, related, Hedera-based startups that we can invest in for equity through that fund.
Nice. So let me throw it over to you, Shayne. Then, what are your most important internal initiatives now at the foundation, and how do they impact the grants that you guys have been offering?
Yeah, the most impactful initiative is to generate revenue. We have one goal. When we came out as a foundation, in comparison to some of the other chains, we were the first foundation that, and we were kind of behind. So we were making grants, getting our name out there, and doing those things that, built and began building both the infrastructure as well as, ecosystem projects that would, whether it was, saucer swap or, bubble swap or some of the other capabilities on the network. That was what we focused on. So now we're focused on how do we generate and grow revenue. The second thing that I think we're doing from an initiative perspective is focusing now and going into next year on the institutional investor. We have created a relationship with a company called The Tie. And The Tie is, think of it as a Bloomberg terminal for digital assets. They're supporting HBAR. I will be presenting November 3rd in New York at the New York Stock Exchange to a room of 400 plus institutional investors. We are, focusing clearly on that segment of the market that's, largely tokenizing real world assets. The other things that we've done are, our evolution from the crypto economy fund, the metaverse fund, the sustainable impact fund, and then the fintech fund, or payments and fintech in particular. We've really coalesced them down to three: on-chain finance. So these are playbooks that we've got, like an enterprise sales organization would go to market with. We've got these community playbooks around on-chain finance, around customer engagement and loyalty, and sustainable impact. And we feel like that covers the gambit, allows us to do the things we need to do to build a sustainable network. Let me give you some numbers. So in 2023, so the history of our network from a revenue perspective, and we've got to operate this like a real company and in partnership with the other ecosystem partners as well as Hedera. In 2022, there was a little over $300,000 worth of network services revenue. Through August of this year, we had done a little over $2 million. Through September, $2.3 million. So, we're looking at almost 10xing or more than 10xing the amount of revenue generated from 2022 to 2023. The revenue services by type, when you break that down, a lot of people are aware of Atma and some other, a couple of other high volume transactions, and you're looking at, the consensus service delivering 83.2% of the revenue that is on the network. But another 10% of the revenue is both in the HTS token and in the smart contract service. So that's compelling. And the reason it's compelling, because it's going to contribute more in network revenue than the whole of the network generated in all of 2022 across all of those services. And that's really, really impactful. And then we try to be really critical on, okay, so we've delivered a bunch of grant dollars, how much of that is attributable to the activities of the foundation? Because I want to make sure that we've built a team, we've got the right focus each and every quarter, each and every year, that we continue to build out this ecosystem. So 92.8% of the revenue is a result of the activities of the HBAR Foundation, 94% of new accounts, and then 99.6% of the transactions. Now, over time, I would expect those numbers for us to potentially come down as, the Hashgraph Association, some of the programs Rod just talked about really come online. But this is good stuff from the perspective of those looking at how do we create a sustainable network. So those are the initiatives that we're focused on right now and going to dovetail into 2024.
Beautiful, beautiful. Is it okay if I ask, where is the crossover point in the future? How far out are we from seeing that profitability kind of place on the network revenue, or at least covering our costs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't have the answer. And the reason is because that's really Hedera LLC. I don't know what their cost is. They don't share that with us. And so all I know is that I have a target of, getting to be as big as we can, generate as much revenue as we can. But my belief is that we should be in a position, in the next 3 to 4 years, hopefully, to be at a point of break even. That's a guess. That's not guaranteed. Again, I don't know the cost of Hedera, but I'm just thinking about, the life cycle of a startup. And oftentimes you have startups and startup ecosystems that aren't profitable for some time, but that's selective. They've chosen not to be profitable. They're generating enough revenue to be profitable, but they're spending into the growth. And, because we're a decentralized set of organizations, we haven't gotten together and said, this is what we're going to do. We each have our role and we're trying to play them. Our role is to build out the infrastructure and, the grants and the ecosystem and projects that generate real revenue for us. if I think about 2024, and I don't know if you're going to ask me about 2024, but if I think about 2024, before I go there, are you going to ask me about 2024? So I'll save it.
David, I think at the end we will.
Okay. All right. There we go.
Save
I'll
it.
save
Thank
it.
you.
I'll save it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's good to know that people are working hard to make sure this network survives, because we're all kind of banking on it. So
yeah, I
thank
mean,
you
going
for
from 300K in revenue to what we believe will be over $3 million. If you had a startup that went from 300K to 3 million, you look at that and say, we're onto something. We're doing the right things. Yes, there's more that's required, and we're not stopping there, but it's signs and proof that the right things are happening. Now, some people that may watch this video will say, wait a second, you're subsidizing some of these transactions. And the answer is, through our grants, we absolutely have. But why is it important? There's two types of grants. There's a grant, if we gave a grant for $100,000 for someone to build a product, we may never see those HBAR come back into the ecosystem. Why? They've spent them, they've turned them into dollars or some other fiat to effectively pay for engineering resources. However, and this is part of the evolution, we really stopped doing that in large part and started saying, you know what, we'll subsidize your building and you can use the HBAR for transaction fees. Why is that important? Well, the HBARs now stay inside of our ecosystem and certainly generate revenue, not in perpetuity, but in some part for organizations and projects to find product market fit and to make sure that they're onto something. And so this is that's the healthy nature and evolution that we've done early on. That wasn't the case. We knew we needed to fund development teams, and we did those things. We really, that became much less a part of what we've done over the last 18 months as a result of just getting smarter around how do we continue to create this ecosystem, but have HBAR come back into the ecosystem through the nodes in the form of transaction fees.
Great.
The other way that can be applied is through rewards as well. So many of the grants that have given out, have a you win, we win kind of reward post delivery. So the development and delivery of the product, the platform, is only the first stage, right? We've got to ensure that we maintain interest, maintain growth, and support that growth. So having a period of reward giving HBAR for the growth of the network, which actually then feeds back, as Shayne says, if every network fee goes back to the treasury, gets distributed to the node operators, and the whole ecosystem then grows. I actually know how much it costs to run a node, because I was on the governing council and we ran a node. I'm not sure those costs have been published, but there is a crossover point, as you say, Tony, where the network itself becomes self-sustaining. It's difficult to model because different network fees have, or different transactions have different fees per the rate card. But the more complex use cases that we're seeing now being developed, not just HCS kind of transactions, an HCS, maybe a dozen HCS transactions followed by a token transaction, 100 account creates, and then some kind of retirement. I'm thinking of the Guardian use cases, where there's a life cycle of a particular operation around a carbon credit. Those are quite complex and multi network transactions. As those use cases grow, then we will get this kind of hyperbolic curve of revenue hitting the network, and the network can grow. Of course, we only got governing council nodes being hosted at this first stage of decentralization, but as we move to community nodes, then the network needs to be self-supporting. The operators of those community nodes need to get at least their costs covered. So there is a fine balance to strike, but I'm certain that over the course of the next couple of years, all of these different use cases stack up, and revenue will accelerate accordingly.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, there's some great insights from both of you. So this question is for both of you. Rob or Shayne. So talking about builders, right? The HBAR Foundry is a collection of builders or people that want to build or are building or developers on Hedera. And so my question is, hey, how do you see the evolution of working with builders in crypto, and what kind of characteristics and skills would you be looking for at potential grantees?
Yeah, so
Shayne, you take this.
Well, I can start. Let me just start. I think I wouldn't say it's specific to crypto. The skills and might be a little bit different. Some of the languages might be different, but the overall premise of what you're trying to do in investing in teams and ensuring teams are able to build on Hedera, those are things you want to look for regardless of whether it's crypto or an enterprise or something. And let me give you an idea as to some of the things that I look for. Prior to doing this, ran a lot of large organizations, companies, did a bunch of mergers and acquisitions, a bunch of venture investing. I made over 40 different venture investments, some of which were incredibly successful. Enterprise companies traded, publicly traded. One of them is a company called Jamf Software, which is a best of breed Mac and iOS management company, and very, very successful. And let me just give you an example of that was probably a perfect example of a type of team you want to build around. Two guys, wonderful human beings, first of all. Secondly, they knew that they wanted to solve a problem. And this was, he was at the time, he went to the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, and he was managing the computer lab. And he wanted to integrate Macs into Active Directory, which is a Microsoft technology. That was it. He wanted it because he was having to manage, adding user accounts and adding security. And they had this bank of Macs and he had to use different tooling. He's like, I just wish I could use the same tool. And he partnered up with a guy who was a value-added reseller for Macs and iOS at the time, worked for a separate company. He said, look, I'll be the technical guy. I've got this product that I've written, but I don't know how to sell it, right? And so these guys partner up, and before you know it, they've got a company. They're doing $5 million in sales when I met them. Now I haven't even looked at how big Jamf is in terms of revenue, but hundreds, multiple hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. What was it about them? One, they were very clear on the problem they were trying to solve, number one. Number two, there was a market there. And this was now 13 years ago. So the market was still fairly nascent, but it was growing. And so you could understand the market size and potential of doing that today. And then third was the team. Was the team quality, even though they didn't have that, neither one of them had been CEO, neither one of them had founded a company before. There were a lot of areas for them to grow as people and as professionals and executives, but they knew the market better than anybody. And so you can hire talent, you can hire a board, you can do other things to help these guys. And so as I think about and apply that same rigor and process here, it's needed. Why? When grantees come to us, we are starting to ask, okay, what's your revenue model? What's your business model, right? It's one thing to develop something that's got a cool feature, but that's going to go away. So what is it that you're thinking about? What market are you trying to serve? How big do you think that market is? And by the way, you're not going to see, I'm going to go to a Gartner report and see some, huge number. For real innovation, you just in your gut, that there's a certain number of enterprises or small to medium businesses or whatever that are ripe for transformation. And you believe that you can go do that. Those are the types of teams, passionate, thoughtful, that you want to invest behind. And so those are the things that I look for in each and every project. And look, I know we've gotten, slammed for not investing in the latest NFT project, et cetera, but you look at the end of the day, some of those projects are going to be really successful and they'll pivot into something that is sustainable and that's going to grow. And guess what? I would have missed out, and I've missed out on plenty that I didn't invest in, that ultimately sold for successful exits. In this scenario, we just want to make sure that founders have a clear vision as to what they're doing, and we want to invest behind those teams.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So if I also resume that in terms of, so you mentioned those 3 points that, very clear problem statement, there's a market fit and the team, and that they know the market, but also passionate and thoughtful. I know a lot of people here are also very passionate about a common thing. Rob, would you like to say something about this?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's absolutely correct. The ventures business always invests in teams rather than ideas, because startups will always pivot. So it's how does that founding team deal with those extraneous kind of influences and manage to make a success, because you're investing in the future. The classic lean startup model of getting the right combination of the hacker, the hipster, and the hustler still holds in Web3. Although we prefer HBARbarians, to be in that mix too. I think the second part of the question is really about how we as organizations interact with the Foundry, right? So how does the HBAR Foundry and your organization benefit from these two grant giving and increasingly venture-based organizations? Well, the Foundry, the HBAR Foundry, Uber HBARbarians, right? Where do I go to other than SWS Labs? In fact, probably in some cases more so than SWS Labs, to get a battle-hardened, skilled view from the trenches, right? The Foundry has, carries all the scars, all the fresh wounds, all of the euphoria of working in the Hedera ecosystem. I attend Foundry calls, not as often as I'd like to, but reasonably regularly. And I honestly believe that the Foundry are the kind of the unheralded champions of the Hedera ecosystem. You're just getting on and getting stuff done. And so, that's hugely important as a knowledge base, as a skill set, as resourcing for the rest of the ecosystem. So we should absolutely have a lot more interaction with the Foundry. I personally, this may not be a popular opinion, or maybe a very popular opinion in this audience, but with the governing council and CorpCom, we address enterprise use cases. I see Foundry as being the startup flip side of that. So you've got the Foundry in the Hedera ecosystem, and then you've got Foundry to do the equivalent job of CorpCom, showcasing use cases, sharing notes, asking for advice, asking for help. So it has a really, really important role to play. And if you turn up on any of the Foundry calls, it's a pantheon of all the people you've seen on Discord and Telegram and around the ecosystem all the time, and they're very, very accessible. So I'm not trying to blow smoke. But you know what I mean. It's an untapped resource, or it's a lightly tapped resource that I think we should use more.
Yeah, and it's a big compliment coming from you, Rob. Thank you so much. Yes, so that was for the question. So how you will see the Foundry fitting in, and it's wonderful how you said that. My experience, if I just give a few words about the Foundry, is also I was kind of trying to develop on Hedera, and I found out I was not a developer, but a no-coder. But and there was this group that definitely collects all the people that you normally maybe not will talk with, but they're all this shared common idea of building on Hedera and sharing that same passion. Absolutely. Shayne, I know is there some thoughts you have on the HBAR Foundry? I know Rob has attended a few of the Foundry calls. I know it's not the case for you, but from what you've heard Rob's saying earlier, do you have any additions in terms of, hey, how do you see the Foundry, the HBAR Foundry, fitting in development of builders within the ecosystem?
Sure. I don't know that it's much different than Rob, but I'll try to give my own perspective. First, I'm sorry if I've been invited to HBAR Foundry calls. I'd love to, catch one every now and then. But if I've been invited and I haven't come, then that's on me. But I don't know that I've been invited. But I think the Foundry, right? It's a bunch of builders and it's a bunch of Hedera experts, all of which we need. And as I look across our ecosystem, there's still a lot of opportunity to build. The work that Jim and team are doing around identity, that continues to be much needed. I mean, I look at what Jeremy did in the early days of Wallet, right? There wasn't really a wallet, right? So he's like, hey, you know what? I'll create my own. Those types of things. Hashpack has done it. Blade has done it from a wallet perspective. You just saw, I think, Bank Social today talked about a wallet they're releasing that's going to be connected to other services that they're excited to announce. I saw the CEO, saw his video. There are opportunities to continue to build capabilities, to build infrastructure that we don't have, and I see that all the time. And I would say, to the HBAR Foundry, find those opportunities. And let's go, whether it's blood and sweat equity that you end up putting in, to create a capability, do it. I would say this, we just had a conversation a couple of hours before this. We as a foundation, we can't go to a set of builders. We can give grants, but we can't go to a development shop and say, we're going to hire you, to develop a bunch of products. That we just can't do that. Can't do it as a foundation, can't do it as a Cayman Foundation. But if you have builders that have a bunch of ideas that they're able to see through the ecosystem and say, wow, this is missing. This piece is missing. There's a bunch of things happening right now with Wallet Connect. That piece is missing. So there are opportunities, and I would just say lean into those opportunities, and think about, and then when you do, think about what I suggested. Is this something that is a feature that I can contribute to open source and the open source community? Or is this something I can really build a business around and that people would pay for? Doing the product management aspect of that, asking the questions, understanding what it is that you need to deliver, that will help you determine, is the thing that you're building a feature, or is it really a product, and can I build a business around it?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shayne, and couldn't have said it better. And you're more than welcome. I mean, it's funny, the HBAR Foundry has been existing for 3 years now. And it's kind of like organically, sometimes, we never ask you or that person, and just rolls in. So
I'm not taking offense. Yeah, I'm not taking offense. I've only
more
been
than
a part
happy.
of this
It'll be lovely
ecosystem.
to have you.
That's great. I've only been a part of the ecosystem for 2 years. Unlike Rob's been around for a while, and so he's been able to attend. But I'm no harm, no foul.
Yeah, no, we know you're busy, and we will definitely make sure you get an invitation, because there's, like you said, all of you said very eloquently, there are rock stars in the HBAR Foundry meetings, and they're there to to collaborate, to share, to support one another, and to build the ecosystem from within, and tighten the relationships of those companies and the people involved. It's really quite awesome, and I found inspiration and resources and everything that has really helped a number of projects along. So it's been very valuable to me. But let's turn now to the outside of the Hedera ecosystem. Let's look at cross-chain opportunities and how we can be more involved with the broader crypto community, because it's something that we all recognize as entrepreneurs. Not all of us, but a lot of the ecosystem projects are looking beyond the Hedera ecosystem, because there's so much more volume potentially out there. We're a tiny little ecosystem, so we have to start to look outside to other chains. So for either one of you guys, in your experience, what's worked around connecting to non-Hedera or even non-crypto communities, and where have we fallen short so far?
Rob, I went first last time. You go first.
Go on. I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So there are lots of different layers for this as we unpack it. I mean, you alluded to the fact we're a smaller community or smaller ecosystem than some of the other layer ones. I mean, I think that's true, but not necessarily on all metrics. Clearly, we're doing more transactions per second than all of the rest of them put together. But certainly in terms of liquidity and it would be great to attract a lot more of that flow into the Hedera ecosystem. So our bridges are really important. We've got Hashport, obviously, as one. We've got a really thriving decentralized exchange ecosystem now, which has really attractive qualities that should be drawing in a lot more traffic, should be drawing in a lot more interest from users of decentralized exchanges and DeFi. So those bridges are super important, not only just because we need them to be cross-chain, but also for the growth of the network. So that's at a kind of network level. At a kind of resourcing and developer level, the focus from SWS Labs on making sure that our EVM compatibility is as close to perfect as possible is super important, because the attracting developer community into the ecosystem is very important as well to enable us to grow. So ensuring that the EVM smart contract service 2.0 operates as expected, with all the tooling and all the the connections that are familiar to developers on other chains, needs to be in place in order to bring them forward. And I know SWS has had a number of initiatives, and the roadmap is full of EVM compatibility and those sorts of changes. And then, of course, we've got from day one, we've not been tribal. So one of the things that actually attracted me to the ecosystem really, really early, I'm a payments guy, I was looking for a micropayments blockchain. But Mance and Lehman's kind of moral high ground, their belief that this is a Web3 space that everyone should participate in, and being non-tribal, embracing the other communities, and ensuring that we always have an objective and kind of grown-up approach to dealing with everyone else. I remember at a time in 2017, it was very, very tribal. It was very, very cutthroat. The ICO boom was kind of driving all the wrong behaviors, and we rose above that. So I think, from an outward perspective, that needs to be maintained and is being maintained. One of the things that I think is truly magical about the Hedera ecosystem is that those early kind of moral and that approach that we saw in the Telegram groups in 2017, that we saw perpetuated ever since, it truly sets us apart and actually makes us very welcoming. On Twitter or X or on Telegram, I see all the time, very welcoming community members, accepting new people into the fold and then educating them and helping them, navigate their way around the Hedera ecosystem. And then we've got some other, you said kind of non-crypto. Well, I actually think over time we will become the non-crypto distributed ledger. People will forget that Hedera actually is Web3 infrastructure because it enables all of these new features. But layers of abstraction on top of that network will enable us to not talk about the fact that it's not a blockchain, or that it's TPS, or it's the features are all funded through holding an HBAR and paying network fees, because we've got capability discussions. And a really good example of that is the Guardian ecosystem. Right? So Wes and Shayne's massive supporter of the Sustainable Impact Fund. All of that investment is really and largely focused outside of the Web3 ecosystem. It's focused into the sustainable impact space. It's COP, which is coming up in very soon, end of November. And so that's that's a great example of where Hedera actually plays outside of the very introverted, inward-looking Web3 space into enterprise. Web 2.5 is the first step towards Web3 for most of these enterprises. Most of that is HCS transactions, but it's on the journey. And we talk in business language, not in Web3 crypto terms. Another, and I'll hand the mic over in a second. Another great example is what Lehman's doing with DREC. Right? DREC isn't even about Web3, right? It's actually about solving a real world problem that we all have in passwords and interacting online. So these are initiatives that are not inwardly focused, but actually for the greater good. And Hedera has always been seen as a public good, in my view, and should continue to be so.
I will just note that with my experience from 2018 being introduced is that what really set Hedera apart from the other networks is that it was never about the token price. It was always about solving problems and enterprise problems. And I still describe Hedera to other people as the only investable enterprise ready layer 1 on the planet. It really is. And the people are trying to solve real business problems, and they are solving them because the technology actually supports those solutions, whereas no other infrastructure does. Now, we're running short on time. I had a question about MENA, but let me throw it back over to you, Milan, for the Governing Council and then 2024 and beyond.
Shall we go to the 2024 question?
Yeah, I think so. I think Shayne had a hard stop, so let's do that. Go ahead, take those.
All right, I'll ask Shayne. What are the HBAR Foundation's goals for next year? What do you see as critical success factors or the biggest challenges in achieving these goals?
Our goals are going to remain the same, right? Grow the awareness, accelerate access, and increase commerce. And those are going to be, and we've got certainly more detailed initiatives to support those goals, but those are the things that we're going to do. So I would say, an even better question would be, what are the key growth drivers that we see for 2024? The first is focus on network sustainability. We are hyper-focused on revenue and making sure that we have positive grant ROI. We're executing on all of the playbooks, on-chain finance, sustainability, consumer loyalty, and brand engagement. We're seeing a significant growth in that part of our business from gaming and sports, and you'll see more coming from us. Key deals that are going to drive that growth. You saw Hyundai make a big announcement. Sustainability. So we've done, you're going to see more around COP28 as Rob talked about from the Varen Gold Standard. You're going to see some other large partnerships that we would do in sports and others. Drop is another one, right? They had the Fed now. They've recently continued to grow their access and getting support for their product, their micropayments product. We think that has a huge opportunity, and Tashiel and team are really figuring out product market fit. Stablecoin Studio is an area of key growth that we believe is going to drive growth. And then council recruitment. So I will mention council recruitment. We are hiring a dedicated head for council recruitment. For those of you that follow me on Twitter, I engaged with someone that was suggesting this, and I said we do have an open job description, largely because right now to recruit to the council, to be on the council, it's a lot more than lending us your brand. We want you to build. And so, when the council, and I don't have a say in it, I'm just recruiting, my team are recruiting. We then put it to the membership committee, MEMCOM. They then determine who then goes to the whole of the council to then be voted on for council membership. And, the requirements have increased. We want you to build. We want you to have a clear idea as to how you would engage with the network, and we want you to be engaged. And then finally, the other key area of growth driver, access to Wall Street. Up until now, we have not had a concerted effort of getting focused on the institutional investor. And we do, our vision is bringing things, on chain, and because we can change lives, right? Whether it's, supply chain and transformation there, whether it's, your latest NFT project built into and with your latest brand. There are ways that many organizations are changing lives, and they're going to do it through and by running on Hedera. So lastly, I'll talk about 2024. We are looking at, as we think about projections, we know what the percentage of network traffic and network services are today. We believe that in 2024, we'll double the amount of revenue. And as importantly, I think, as what we talked about when we think about the breakdown of services revenue, if you recall, in 2023, this year, 83% of the network revenue has been generated by HCS transactions. We believe that in 2024, and this isn't doing funky math, it's effectively taking the linear regression of what's happening on chain today and just extending that out with the grants that we know about. The token service and the smart contract service will become approximately 30% of overall network revenue in 2024. That's more than 700% growth year over year in those services. And so we feel like we're on the right trajectory from a revenue perspective. We need to continue to work with our grantees and helping them go live and get successful on the network. As we think about many of these organizations, Zenny Travel as an example, you're like, who is Zenny Travel? But they've got something called Zenny Pay. And inside Zenny Pay, they leverage the HTS token service. It's not an ATMA, HCS high throughput application, but the HTS transactions are generating a significant amount of revenue from an application you may have never heard of. And they are transforming the travel industry, and they're doing it on Hedera. And you're going to see more and more accounts created in the next 6 months. It'll likely more than double the accounts that we've got on chain today. And so I'm excited by the things that are starting to take shape. And in the early days, everyone was pressed for, give us metrics, give us things that you're doing. And it takes time to incubate and get these things live, because if you really are building a business and a business model, you want to do it right. And so with that, that's where we see now and in the future. And I'm very excited about what the future holds for us as Hedera and as an ecosystem.
Thank you. Let's just close up. Rob, why don't you summarize for us what's happening here and what we can look forward to?
Yeah. So we've got very exciting plans for the next couple of years. As we lean into 2024, I've already talked about the Ventures Fund, so we'll be raising that fund and distributing through the Ventures program. We'll continue to run the Innovation program. The Enterprise program has got some amazing governing council projects that are just kicking off, or some have been running for some time now. So all of those will start contributing to the growth of the network, and there'll be a lot of announcements. We'll also, and I alluded to earlier, we've got our global growth strategy. So THA will have chapters set up in MENA, in Middle East, North Africa. We've got an African focus over the next year, not only with Flutterwave, but through our base in Morocco with Orange and a number of other initiatives. Dubai, we've got our announced partnership with Do, which is an ecosystem partner that follows a model that we will repeat across the planet, where we have very strong, very embedded partners who can help us grow with that kind of strong cultural understanding and fit in countries, but with access to government. Then we've got Asia Pacific, right? So I'm based out of Australia. We've always had a very strong Hedera presence across Asia Pacific. It's very culturally diverse, hugely populous, as we know. So on the western side with India, we've got the Bharat Blockchain Yatra, 6 months with a major sponsor of a massive series of hackathons accessing 50,000 developers. In Vietnam, the CCE, which is a big sustainable focused US-based grant giving program that we're going to sponsor and co-develop in Vietnam. Singapore and Hong Kong have always been heartlands of Asia Pacific, so that we've got lots and lots of amazing things that we'll establish once the chapter is in place, probably out of Singapore. So exciting times, and THA, we're looking for partnerships for long-term impact and that give sustainable growth for the Hedera ecosystem. With all those kind of government and enterprise and startup opportunities in each of those regions will start interconnecting and creating network effect through the presence and of the innovation and ventures programs. There are opportunities across Middle East, across Africa, across Asia Pacific, and basically we'll be looking for equitable models for all partners to benefit from, and in doing so, grow the entire Hedera ecosystem.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rob. I know Shayne had to go. He had a time constraint at the top of the hour. So thank you, Shayne. Thank you, Rob, for your time, for your answers, for an excellent hour, more than an hour, actually. So I'd like to wrap this up. So we at the HBAR Foundry, we will do many more exciting things. We'll have webinars on more technological deep dive. We are also excited to hear if you're a builder or your developer and you're working on something, maybe you're struggling or you're maybe very enthusiastic to share about your project. Go to hbarfoundry.com, sign up and join us on one of our Foundry calls. We are a very nice bunch. You will probably know many of us that are attending those Foundry calls. And yes, looking forward to maybe seeing you there, the person who's watching right now. And for now, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to this YouTube channel. And yes, see you around. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rob, again. Thank you, Shayne, Tony.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.